What is Doug reading? That's the word.
Oh, hey.
Hey, it's Doug.
What's shaking, guys?
We happened to catch you reading something, it looks like.
Just thumbing through, one of the greatest books ever written.
Really?
The Book of the Damned. Yes. And if you didn't know that, they'll tell you right here.
Oh, wait a second. Did I title this the work of the damned, or did I say dead? No, I said damned.
Oh, I hope you said damned.
Me too.
Book of the Dead. We probably will get to the Book of the Dead. So if you did, we could swap out that thumbnail for another one.
Yeah.
But welcome back, folks.
Tell us about this. Well, I guess just a preview for people, if this is your first What is Doug Reading show. Of course, it's on Open Minds, but this isn't a UFO-centric show. It is a weird-centric show because Doug often reads weird stuff, and so we talk about that. This is my good friend, Douglas Smythe. And I guess, should we do our whole thing before we get into the book, talk about what we've been up to this week?
Yeah, sure. What have you been up to?
Me? I actually got done doing 2 interviews just now. One of them is for the Rojas Reports with Steve McDaniel. He's starting this thing called Sky Hub. Really cool. It's him and these other people, and they've already got these devices made that watch the sky, and there's AI, so it can tell if it's a bird or a plane, that sort of thing, to grab more data. Plus, he's got a long history in naval intelligence. So I asked him some questions about his observations about what we're seeing about this UFO stuff. And then I just got done on this podcast called Pajama Pants Productions and our podcast, and it is with a guy named Kassem and also Jamie Lynn Sigler and Rob Eiler. Those are the 2 kids who played, or the 2 people who played the kids on The Sopranos. Sopranos. So of course they're interested about UFOs. The Sopranos. Luckily, their buddy, one of the guys on there, was a fan of my show, and so he had me call in or come on to talk UFOs. So I'll share the link when that gets out there. That was a lot of fun. It was interesting.
Very, very cool.
Oh, other than that, I've written a bunch of UFO stories. Been focusing on UFO crashes because that's become a thing. But go to openminds.tv to see more about that, or join tomorrow on the show, and I'll talk about that.
Wait. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's unpack that. It's become a thing. What do you mean by that?
Oh, so the New York Times wrote an article that was supposed to be about how the Senate Intelligence Committee is supposed to be or has made a request for the intelligence agencies to tell them what they know about UFOs. But then the New York Times article put in a weird twist in that they claimed that a lot of these guys, the To the Stars guys, believe in UFO crashes, including Harry Reid. Harry Reid got mad. There were lots of corrections to this story. Harry Reid said that he was they misinterpreted what they had said, essentially. But still, people like Elizondo, who ran the Pentagon program, and Eric Davis, who's a scientist, who first revealed all this on my podcast, Open Minds UFO Radio, that he believes there are UFO crashes. So are there or not? I've analyzed what Eric Davis has said in some articles. And then because it's a thing, and potentially he thinks it's a thing, I also posted some articles about the best U.S. cases, international cases. I posted an article a couple weeks ago about Roswell, and I'll be posting another Roswell article fairly soon here, just to kind of get everybody up to speed on what's out there so they can decide for themselves.
Very cool. Very cool. So this is kind of on topic in that regard. What do you think is going on in no, not the book. We're about to get to that, but I just want to get this out of the way because I've been meaning to ask you. Antarctica. What's your take on what's going on there? Or what's going on there? I think
what's going on there is I got a little bit of insight into what's going on out there recently, actually.
Do tell.
Yeah. I was at the San Diego Zoo, and the penguins. There's a penguin section there, which I love. And so I was able to get insight on what the natives do, in particular the penguin natives, and they're really funny. They waddle around and play and swim around. It's really cold out there. So yeah, that's essentially what I know about what's going on.
That's what you got when it comes to Antarctica. That's all you got for us.
That's all I got.
Inquiring minds want to know.
That's all I got. Otherwise, there's a lot of rumor and theory and kind of goofy conspiracy stuff I've heard of, but I think the penguins were much more credible.
Last time I asked a question. Hey, welcome everybody. I see that Stacy's here.
There's scientific evidence that the frolicking they do at the zoo is similar to what occurs out in the Antarctica. So that's scientific evidence there.
It's cruel.
But what about you? You haven't told us what you're doing for this week.
This week, I've just been working a lot. I mean, during this COVID crisis, that's all I really can do. I can be trapped at home talking to you or working. And so we've just been working at our craft, developing new products, if you will. I've been testing a lot of razors, believe it or not, and you're probably going to say not, but you see how this beard's shaped? You can't do that with a butter knife. So testing out some new designs there, some prototypes. We have a big release come tomorrow. And actually, it's not really anything... well, it's not one of our own. We're actually doing an homage to a popular scent. Actually, a very interesting scent, a historical scent, if you will. Royal Mayfair by Creed. We're doing an entire line of an homage to it. And if you don't know, and you may not, and this crowd may not, but what is it? Okay, the Duke of Wales. Creed originally made it for the Duke of Wales about 80 years ago, if not more. Now I think about it, probably 90 years ago. This scent bespoke just for him. And that was it. He used it. They took the recipe and locked it away in a vault. And that's where it was for the last 90 years. And then come 2009, Creed re-released this to the public as a limited edition, and people freaked out over it. And if you smell it, you understand why. So they've been doing limited edition versions of it for the last 10 years. And it's
you back engineered it.
I back engineered it. It's typically $100 and something a bottle. Ours is not going to be that much, and it's for it's making it this classic historical scent available for everybody. I think in that way, but yeah, and it's one of my scents. It's got a very gin forward note, which I think is a very summery type scent. So it's one of my favorites, and I feel honored to be part of the tradition. And what I'm doing differently, rather than use the rose note they used in it was from the Duke's own garden, his rose garden. I've taken the Lady Banksy rose from Tombstone, Arizona, and I've incorporated that into the fragrance. And that, not only is it from Tombstone, it's also the largest of that species in the world that grows in Tombstone. A lot of people don't realize that. I know. So we got that going on. We're going to be releasing that, I think, hopefully tomorrow. So I'm excited about that. And again, a lot of people are excited about that because I think it's the first homage or a tribute to that scent, or clone, to keep it thematic with our show, of that scent since it's been re-released in 2009. So got that going on. Again, not my own creation. I did have fun with it. I made some tweaks of my own, but it's it's just I'm playing part of that tradition.
Fun. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It's a lot
so
of
what
fun.
about, why did you ask about the Antarctic? Actually, Stacy, who you just mentioned, she was with Phoenix MUFON. She was with us. She went to the zoo with us. She was in town in San Diego here. San Diego is awesome. She says only 4 of the 18 species of penguins live in Antarctica. Thank you, Tracy or Stacy. But still 4. There are some penguins out there. And she also made the joke. Did you want to? She said, the Book of the Damned. Damn. That's cute.
I don't know if that's a joke.
I think it was. I like it.
Yeah, you think so?
So anyway, why did you ask me about Antarctica? What were you expecting me to say? There's not.
I don't know. I never know.
Underground.
I like to throw different questions at you because I never know where you're going to go with it. And you didn't disappoint, walking amongst the natives, as you claim to have done with Stacy, which I'm still doubtful of. You went there. We followed. We appreciate it.
I probably got evidence.
It's just that, stuck to the bottom of your shoes. But the thing is we hear about Antarctica a lot in the wacky world of the paranormal and whatnot. And so I was wondering what your take is on it, because it seems to have left the media right now in the last 6 months. But I mean, up until a year ago, they were still talking about secret, covert missions to Antarctica and why, and they're tracing people's Fitbits there. They can tell John Kerry was there at one point, so on and so forth. And plus Antarctica, it's far away. It's tough to prove anything. So it's often, it's easy to to take that and run with it. And then you have, anomalies like the Pyrenees maps and so on and so forth that confuse the issue even more. So I was wondering what your take would be on that. Or maybe even those maps.
Here's evidence.
The reason why I'm going here, actually, folks, is because this week's book is, as I stated at the beginning, is the Book of the Damned. And if it wasn't for this book, we probably wouldn't be here right now.
There's a bear. Bear from the zoo.
And there's a bear. Oh, yeah, look at that. I don't know if I'm a fan of zoos.
Big old grizzly.
Oh, look at him.
Yeah, I know. I kind of... oh, look. Stacy sent me to prove that we were there.
It's a damn
There's
joke.
some proof. There's Karen.
That's totally photoshopped. Totally photoshopped.
You
totally
jerk off. Jerk off.
Anyways, yes, Charles Fort. He was the first one, folks, back in 1919 when he put this book together to really create the field we know as paranormal. He combined all this data together, all these different disciplines from strange anomalous reportings from all around the world, thousands and thousands and thousands of them he compiled over the years in the New York Public Library and put it together in a book. He didn't call it paranormal, in fact. He actually didn't even really appreciate that word. He thought, well, it's all normal. So to call it paranormal, he didn't want to, he didn't want to.
I do agree with that, too. That sense. I mean,
yeah.
It's all part of our natural environment. We just don't know what it is.
We don't understand it.
But I guess paranormal kind of works because it's outside of our normal. Supernatural maybe doesn't work because it's not really not natural. But paranormal,
you know what? I'm sorry. Yeah, Supernatural 2 was another one he had a problem with, but I think he didn't think it was helpful. I don't think that. I've read that he didn't think that was helpful when exploring these things. In fact, it hurt any serious look or anyone taking a serious look at these events. And that's what his argument always was, though playfully made, because he was truly a skeptic. His argument was, science has been ignoring these things, or they don't have any ways to explain it, so they don't explain it, or they just write it off. So he was always coming down on scientists of his day, which when you read it now, knowing what we know about people that are against science and whatnot, it comes off like that. Though I think it's just, it's tough to read now through our modern filter what he was really about. And at the end of the day, he could have been just one big prankster, the way he writes. But he's such a satirist when it comes to writing about this stuff. I mean, he puts it all into perspective and then dissects it in front of you of what's going on. And he's covered, I mean, everything that we talk about today, everything that's popular today, 100 years ago, this guy brought to the forefront. Let's say like hauntings and miracles, for one. He goes after them, not with like a religious bent or on a religious bent or a spiritualist was at the popular time. He's going after it scientifically and trying to understand it and explain it away. He also talks about ball lightning. He was one of the first people to bring up the concept of ball lightning, which now we're starting to go, oh, well, that is possibly a real phenomenon. That's going on. UFOs. He was the first one to talk about UFOs. Well, kind of first one to talk about, but put it in this book, really, in line with everything else. Cryptids, out of place artifacts, alien abduction, especially for cases. Yes.
Oh, really? What year was
1919? Biblical wonders, like possibly UFO, poltergeists with psychic explanations. I mean, like all this stuff that we're still talking about. He was the forefather. He was the godfather of the paranormal, if you will. Even though he probably wouldn't care for that term. And so, shortly before his death, shortly after his death. No, a year before he died, because he had such a slew of like followers, popular, writers, novelists, screenwriters, Buckminster Fuller, Frank Lloyd Wright, Dorothy Parker, so on and so forth. They had such a huge following, believe it or not, that they put together the Fortean Society in New York. This whole society based around this school of thought in regard to the paranormal. And they actually invited him there. The first, when they first opened under a false pretext, he gets there and they wanted to make him president. And being who he is, anti-authoritarian, he was like, no, I'm not going to do this at all. But to this day, the Fortean Society still exists. In fact, I subscribe. Isn't it strange the size of magazines in Europe? This is printed in England. You can always, when you go to Barnes and Nobles or wherever you get your books, they always stand out their magazines, don't they? Because they're longer. But I digress. So Fortean Times is still in print, and it's a really fun, great read. And I often, when I would be at the gym, I would be sending you pictures from this, because this is what I read on the bike when I'm there.
Yeah, so this is kind of what prompted this show to be created.
Yeah, actually, this is probably exactly what prompted the show to be created. Charles Fort.
Interesting. So the Fortean, because a lot of people hear that term, especially when you get involved with paranormal, and they don't even know where that comes from. They're like, what is Fortean? That sounds weird.
Yeah.
People making a joke, but it's a real thing. I do want to mention, because I like to interact with our commenters, that Dirk Bonesteel, who of course has a great name. In fact, he's got a little critter. Look at his cute little critter. What is that, Dirk? That is your... he says flat earthers think that the Antarctica is essentially what he's talking about, is surrounded by the military. They think a giant ice wall is there. They're not a Mensa type group. True, they are not a Mensa type.
No, there's no members of Mensa that are in the Flat Earth Society.
But that reminds me of the wall on Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones.
See, I've never seen Game of Thrones.
You never saw Game of Thrones. You said you never saw Sopranos, even though you were just saying that those are the best characters.
I was just being supportive. I was being supportive. I'm a friend.
No, that was very nice. Thank you for being supportive.
Thank you. No problem,
they are good. They were they were pretty good. They were kids, though, on the show.
Yeah. The way you explained to me yesterday is you were interviewing children. So I was like, how does that work? And turns out they grow up.
Dirk says this is a wombat with a cigarette. So sorry, we're getting back to Charles Fort.
Of course it is.
So Charles Fort, 1919. What's interesting about all of this is that was the period of time for like the Theosophical Society was a big deal. Table tapping, all seances.
Yeah, about 40 years before that. Yeah.
And everybody, Houdini was into this. Edison was into it. Tesla. In fact, I wrote this story because Bill Burns, who wrote The Day After Roswell, wrote a book on Tesla and Edison fighting about stuff. And one of the things they fought about was the ghost phone. And I wrote an article on this for Den of Geek because they were both working on a ghost phone. And Edison was a skeptic, but he had a psychic friend who convinced him that ghosts were real. So Edison then started working on this ghost phone.
But Houdini's involvement was the exact opposite. He was there to disprove that this stuff was real.
Yeah.
He didn't like what he was seeing as a sleight of hand guy himself. He realized a lot of these spiritualists were part of the psychic mafia, if you will.
And I think he's probably right.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I think he was too. There was big money being made back then in spiritualism and in all that stuff,
So how is the book laid out? And is this the book that started it all then? Is this like his first book?
This is his first book. After this book, then again, 1919, this came out. He wrote probably about 10 novels before this, was only happy with one of them and published that with the help of Theodore Dreiser, his writer friend, got that published for him, or finagled it to be published. He wrote a lot of science fiction, but he never saw success with that. And this is where he really made his name, was finally just facts and data. And that's what he was doing. And he's putting all this data together of all these anomalous events in one place. And he spent his days in the New York Public Library just jotting it down. And he never really took a stance on any of these stories, whether he thought it was real or not. So, which reminds me of Missing 401, but that's just all I'm going to say there. Reminds me of Dave, though, how he doesn't take a stance too. But his other books came shortly after this one. So 1923 brought us New Lands. And New Lands was going down the same road, though it was New Lands, but the same scientific anomalies is what he was calling them by that point. That came out in 1923. And then 1931 brought Low, which Low is an interesting one because, again, he introduces the word teleportation. So that was created by Charles Fort. And that's like a spontaneous relocation of people and things. That's what he's talking about in that book. And then again, at the end of 1931, he releases Wild Talents. And Wild Talents is pretty much psychic events, fires started and weird things happening, and which he relates back to psychics be that they know they're psychic or not, or just people with wild talents is what he was calling that back then, which I think is just, paranormal. That's what he means by that. But yeah, those were his other books. And then he died in 1932. So of probably leukemia, actually. And
really?
But he didn't want to go to the doctor though. So he ended up dying there. And his wife actually had a couple ghost sightings of him. I think 2 of them, right after he died at some point, but I didn't dig too deep into that. But I didn't want to stray too far away from this book. But yeah, fascinating guy. I mean, he really was. I mean, he grew up pretty well off in Albany, New York. In fact, he's buried in Albany, New York. And you can still, people go visit his grave all the time. And that cemetery that's in, I can't remember the name of it right now, but a lot of strange events, ironically enough, or fittingly enough, come out of that cemetery. But yeah, born well off. He didn't, instead of going into the family business, he became a freelance writer. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, you see that, like how it's still relevant to this day, these type of people. A lot of us now are doing the freelance writing thing where you couldn't do that 20 years ago. So it's like a return to that. And, that's what he did. Like Mark Twain, all the other guys of his era began freelance writing, trying to find his niche and carving out a living. And he somehow got involved in the paranormal. He just thought that this is something that's happening. It's not being explained. Up until this point, people would explain a lot of these things away as religious events or, or omens or something like that. So he really, though he seems a little anti-science in his stance on these things, or always putting science down. I'm always a little skeptical when people start tearing apart science and scientists, or they're not doing their research. That always freaks me out. He does a little bit of that, but you got to give him credit because he shed a light onto these things that people were pretty much afraid to talk about then, because they didn't know how to describe them, how to talk about them.
So even though he didn't have a stance, he was mostly skeptical.
He was very skeptical to the point where people didn't know if he was kidding or joking. I think that's where a lot of his following came from. It's kind of like the hipsters and their irony. I think there was a lot of hip people back then that were into him because it's so out there and so and he himself, again, he would never stay straight up. He was always like playful or joking around, really sarcastic, more like a satirist, like Mark Twain, very satirical. So, and it was more to create more questions and to get people talking about these things and create an awareness around these weird events that make life exciting at the end of the day. It breaks the monotony of everyday life. And I think that interested him. And the fact that a society exists now around him to this day, I think goes back again. If this was one big joke, it's even, it's even more brilliant now.
Right. So we have a comment. Read The Ghost of 29 Megacycles by John Fuller if you want the inside track on the ghost phone. I'm going to write in the chat here. No.
Don't tell him how to live his life, Chikai. The Ghost of 29 Megacycles. I'll write that down. Thank you.
No, read my article. I'm going to post my article. Be stubborn. Just kidding. Thank you for that input. That sounds very interesting. But do read my article. So that's weird. So I just put the article in the chat, and it also posted some weird code. We just had a Fortean event.
That's your Bitcoin number.
Oh no, my Bitcoin number. But no, I don't know why it did that.
As an extension of these books, if you do pick up, and I think if you do have a paranormal library you're building at home, I think Book of the Damned is perfect for that. If you can find a first edition, good luck. But to supplement that, I'm telling you, see, I like to subscribe to magazines. I know it's not hip right now. Everyone likes to read everything digitally. It hurts my eyes. I can't do that. And, this is just more, again, if I bring it to the gym, I can bring it in a sauna even, and I'm not going to be pulling pages out, which I've done in the past. So I'm not proud of it that I use a sauna. But anyways,
you take magazines into the sauna?
You can bring whatever you want, So these are modern. This is so the spirit continues. And so every month you get like where ghosts gather. These are some of the articles where ghosts gather. The House on the Borderland, The Chase Vault Mystery Revisited. Right here, Building a Fortean Library, Fortean Traveler. And that's pretty much what I am. Whenever I travel anywhere, I don't know if you're like this too, Alejandro, but I always go to Atlas Obscura online and see what weird stuff I need to check out in that area is. And so I guess I would consider myself a Fortean traveler in that regard.
You know what's funny? I'm not like that. I don't seek it. This is my problem.
It finds you.
Like, I'm trying to think of a character who's like this. Because when I don't seek it, I try to avoid it. But like you said, it finds me. Now, it could partially be because I surround myself with a lot of the people, my friends and stuff are into this stuff, like you, of course, my girlfriend, Karen. So that's probably it. But I avoid this stuff because it feels like work and I just can't. It finds me, like you said.
I think what character I would relate to you to is probably Scooby-Doo.
Very much like Scooby-Doo, just minding my own business.
Yeah. And I'm Shaggy maybe, and suddenly we're immersed
You are Shaggy.
Suddenly we're trapped at sea on a boat that's just stopped running. True story, folks.
Yeah, that is a true story. People are getting sick. There's whales left and right, and I'm having a ball.
Sharks. There was a shark, and there was a seal, I believe, involved also.
There was a shark, a hammerhead.
Yeah, we're all getting seasick, and he's drinking Budweiser and having a great time. Anyways, ball lightning. I thought it was fascinating that he was actually covering ball lightning 100 years ago.
That is really interesting.
Have you ever seen ball lightning? Any
no, I haven't.
There?
No,
I have.
You have. You've seen ball lightning. Tell us.
I have. It. Well, okay. This is in the 80s. I was at a friend's house on a rainy day, in the living room watching TV. And what happened? We only found this out after the fact. But okay, while we're watching a movie, a ball of light comes through the window into the room, hovers for a second, then goes through the wall behind us. And behind that wall, my sister was with my friend's sister playing with something. They saw the light go through the wall and kept going through the house. But what we found out happened after the fact was lightning struck the transformer in front of the house. So I don't know what that was, but it was something. We saw something. And
how big was this?
I don't even remember. It was like a ball of light. It was like those Tesla ball thing. Yeah, it was insane.
This is crazy because ball lightning is not something that's proven.
Well, yeah, I know, but people see stuff. Another thing I saw was when I was biking I was on a motorcycle heading to Panama. I don't know if I actually made my way into Panama yet. In the rain, soaking wet, driving down this dirt road. It was horrible. It was, but I think I had sunglasses on, and it was around twilight. I had to wear sunglasses though, just to keep the rain out of my eyes. That's all I had. And lightning struck a transformer again while I was on my bike, and there was no ball lightning involved, but it was still something I witnessed while I was trying to stay alive on this bike, holding everything together. They were throwing everything at me is what it all comes down to. So that was twice in my life that I saw a transformer or something to do with a transformer getting struck by lightning.
So a couple comments. First of all, Charles Fort is cited a lot in the beginning of the Gods of Eden. I'm not sure what that is. Second of all, Dirk popping in again. He's doubting your story, at least in some ways. He's saying normal electricity would vanish the moment it had a ground. So he's saying perhaps what you saw then was something more mysterious.
Well, a lot of weird things did happen in this house. There was a lot of like paranormal stuff.
That's a crazy story. Like that's a really wild story.
Yeah, I guess it is. And I didn't even think about it until I was reading this book. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that happening. Like, oh yeah, my sister remembers it happening. Like we saw something, and my friend's mother was in the room too. Oh, you know what it was? This is what it was. So it went through the room, through the wall, and into the TV in the next room, into the TV. And that was it. And it was gone.
Were there any marks on the television or the wall?
No, I don't think so. I don't.
Wow.
I'm like, must have been like 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere around there. I mean, this is probably 1985.
Think of what lightning does. Lightning hits something and it's fried big time, right?
Yeah.
So if this was ball lightning, if this was, even a plasma energy of some sort, you would think it would leave a mark. you know? Wow.
I don't really remember. It definitely didn't leave a mark. It didn't, I would have remembered that, but I mean, it was just like, it all happened so fast. Yeah, it was weird. But a lot of weird stuff happened in this house too. I remember like photos disappearing. There was something about photos disappearing.
Wow.
They were on the wall one second and then they were, and I like to think there's an explanation for everything. So, I mean, I still can't wrap my mind around a lot of those things, but yeah.
And the reason why I'm so floored is that I've heard a lot of very credible ball of light, BOL, some people call them, ball of light stories. Of course, in the paranormal world, and I mean like the ghost hunters believe those to be like ghosts in another form or spirits or something. In the UFO world, of course, some people think them to be UFOs or aliens themselves traveling around. And of course, the more nuts and bolts think it could be some sort of plasma energy. In fact, there was a UFO report done called Project Condign, different than Condon, Condign. And this was in the UK. And essentially, it was a bunch of intelligence people in the UK interested in UFOs. So they did an investigation, but they couldn't get to anything. So they just speculated. And they speculated that, UFOs are kind of some sort of plasma ball, natural forming, and that people are having physical effects from it, such as losing time and stuff like that. They kind of tried to wrap it all up into this whole thing. But, I've heard a lot of credible ball of light stories. And I just find them really fascinating because I find so many of the stories credible, including yours. I actually believe, despite the beard and the hat, I believe you're a credible
I know it's easy to make fun of someone's handicap, so I appreciate that. But well, ghost lights too. Remember, you've heard of ghost lights. I mean, every in Colorado state has their own stories about ghost lights. Those floating lights in the distance. They can't really pinpoint what they were. Some people just dismiss them as traffic lights, so on and so forth. Where in nowadays you probably could. However, these have been reported for the last 150 years. So ghost lights.
Wow, that's an extraordinary tale.
There's some other names for ghost lights as well. Will the Wisp, Will the Wisp in Europe. But those random floating lights, like
fairy lights, probably I think they call them too.
Fairy lights also, yep. So there's that.
Oh, we don't know what those says are. St. Elmo's Fire.
St. Elmo's Fire, same thing. Yeah, Will the Wisp, St. Elmo's Fire. So it's an interesting phenomenon, and that's all we know about it, really. But he was talking about it and putting it on the table with cryptids, UFO. I mean, this was unheard of then. You wouldn't put this you wouldn't lump all these things together. So cutting edge for his time, and still to this day, if this book came out today, a lot of you guys would buy it, including myself.
Wow. Oh no. I just got a text. So Ben Hansen's, I'm supposed to do a thing with him, and he wants to do a time that I'm going to be busy. So tomorrow at 4:30 p.m., I'll be talking with the Chicago MUFON group, doing a thing like this for them. And Ben wants me to do something at the same time because he's got a new TV show. I guess I probably can't say much about it, but this is kind of a help launch it. But out of comments online, Chikai, who earlier had mentioned the article you wanted to, or the book for the ghost phone, they said, I read an article in Fortean Times, of all things, that had an interesting theory that ball lightning was connected to ghost lights caused by tectonic friction. I've heard that story too.
I didn't realize. I never even thought of connecting it to tectonic friction, but
because I guess in labs, and I think I've seen it, they've taken, they can compress things. So they've taken like rocks and they have these things that crush them. And they've been able to see little balls of plasma that last very short amount of time that come out.
Interesting.
But
interesting.
I think that's the biggest evidence actually for ball lightning.
I'm leaving out some stuff. Another thing he talks about in this book is stuff falling from the sky. Random things, fish, frogs, meat, metal, rocks, just to name a few. He's got a lot of these stories, are a lot of data from the library on these strange anomalies too. And I thought that was interesting because I remember reading stories about, frogs falling from the sky, my
Now I've
weekly
had one
reader
of
when I was in
those
school.
situations.
Oh, you have?
But so we were driving from Colorado to Minnesota, and I think we were in Minnesota. It was several days. We stopped in South Dakota when I was a kid, and it was raining. And I remember looking out of the car because it looked like there were tons of frogs. And even then, I'm a vegetarian now, animal dude, so I'm all freaked out, right? Concerned because we're smashing all these frogs.
Oh, yeah.
Because the street was covered with them. It was raining really hard, and the roads were covered with these little frogs. So I looked it up, and allegedly these frogs can, like, when the water evaporates, frogs can
float up to the clouds.
into the clouds somehow and rain down. But that might not have been it. They also supposedly could there are a lot of frogs, and they got them out in Arizona. Well, they're dormant under the ground almost all the time, and they come out when it rains. I used to have this kind of dried pond bed by my house where that was the case, and you would hear them. They're super loud, and I would go check it out. And this is in the desert of Arizona, so it doesn't rain hard very often, and that's the only time they come out. So that was probably it.
Similar situation, not with them falling from the sky, but crabs in Central America. They also lie dormant under the sand in a certain time, or anywhere. I lived high up on a hill away from the beach, and I would find them in my shower, in my house. Like, they were coming in. I was camping one time in the jungle. They were coming up under my tent. It was like a scene from something from Alfred Hitchcock. But the coolest little crabs, they're like purple and yellow and really cool looking. But again, in the wildest places, like in the jungle, they're coming up out of the ground. I guess it's just from birds carrying them away and dropping them in different places and them burrowing, or I don't know how they procreate. But similar though. Similar. They weren't falling from the sky, however. But so he covers a lot of that, and I think that's interesting because that even goes back to the plagues of Egypt. Frogs falling from the sky and whatnot. So this is something that probably was observed by ancient folks as well. And then out of place artifacts. He does out of place artifacts also. So I think that's, again, current stuff we're still talking about in the paranormal groups and forums. He's covered back then. He already figured it out, folks.
That's interesting. Yeah, with the crabs, of course, we've got tons of crabs here in San Diego, and even in the it's weird because there's a ton of them in the lagoon by me, and you go over there, and there's two species, but we do see them procreate once in a while. They just kind of like, one crab comes crawling along, and then another crab comes crawling along, and they kind of just get on top of each other, and there's some movement. That's kind of how I wonder if
they ever give each other humans.
yeah.
You gave me a case of humans.
They come out of nowhere, especially on the beach. People don't realize right under your feet there'll be tons of them, and you can spot their little bubbles coming up and scoop them up. But they can burrow very quickly and easily.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I guess the thing is, with his meager career, he's become more influential than a lot of more prolific writers at the end of the day. And
was he just not well known in his time?
He was in certain circles. He, but his book was Book of the Damned. This was everywhere. One of the greatest books ever. This was a good read. This was a really fun read, very interesting in those times. As again, still today is, and a lot of it reads very modern. It's not overly wordy. It's more a collection of data, and it stands the test of time, if you ask me. And it was popular with the masses, but it was also just, very popular among people you wouldn't expect it to be. But this is before the internet and all the distractions that we have today. So I could imagine this being something you want to read by the fire, or staring out the window.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't have this in my collection. Actually, let's see if I can show you some of my books. I get rid of so many. I got rid of a ton when I moved.
Oh, dude, you should have given me some.
But they weren't. Well, probably maybe some of them you would have been interested in. And I do have. Let me see. I got some interesting ones, but I got these weird ones I came across. I'll see if I can find one in just a sec. But my point being that, again, this is another book that you're telling us about that I feel kind of bad I don't have in my collection.
Well, that's why we do this show. We're trying to get everyone up to speed here.
Exactly.
How's everyone doing out there? I see the comments have slowed down. Guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, by all means, let us know.
Wow. I don't know. They're in there somewhere, but some pretty weird ones that I had found over the years. But I think what I really appreciate of the Fortean stuff and his approach, because I don't think my approach is too different in that,
Right.
Trying not to judge and sharing the information. And it's funny because it's hard to do that because everybody wants to know your opinion. And I say this, and I'm not even kidding. My opinion's kind of secondary to the information because I'm no expert and I could have it wrong. Of course, I have opinions, but it doesn't, well, I guess in a way I'm kind of an expert. Doesn't mean that I have it right because you never know with a lot of this stuff. So I appreciate that.
It's tough to be motivated by objectivity. I find people with opinions typically that's what motivates them. So I'm always shocked when someone can stand back from their work and let it do its own thing without a real opinion. Otherwise, I'm impressed by that.
Doug's letting down the Pilkington Smythe. No safari suit harmonical.
Oh, I didn't update my my name on my. I don't do monocles, however.
And then the mummified toads. This is Chikai again. I hope I'm saying that right. I like the Chikai. If that's the way it's said, I like that. The mummified toads they found in coal was one of my favorite Fort stories, unless it was a hoax. That was genuinely baffling. Are you aware of that story?
Yeah. I don't know if it was coal, though. I remember it being a rock. This story is, in fact, Looney Tunes. Remember the "Hello, my baby, hello, my darling"? When they find
hello,
that
my baby, hello, my darling, hello, my.
Remember in like a rock, they find him in a brick or something like that. That story's been around for a long time. Like maybe it does start with Charles Fort. I can't remember. I've heard different versions of that though, where a live toad or frog, I can't remember now, was found inside a rock. Like a hollowed out rock or something like that. But yes, the charcoal one. Maybe I did read that. I can't remember that. I started this book such a long time ago. But yes, it is an interesting story, and it wasn't mummified. It was alive, from what I remember.
Yeah, something like it was dormant, like you had talked about with those other froggies. So here's Steve Padilla asked a question. Normally I probably wouldn't answer, but he's highlighted in a color, which means he's a subscriber, which is essentially saying I've got to answer him because he's a subscriber. So, but which reminds me, do subscribe. You can subscribe to watch all the videos, the Rojas reports. That's the only way you're going to see them is you can listen to them on Patreon, but you can subscribe here on YouTube to watch them, or you could subscribe a little higher to join us live on those. And once you see the new one, you're going to want to do that. They're all really good. I'm supposed to have Luis Elizondo next week. But he said, did you move to Encinitas to be near to the Star's office? No, I didn't. It was coincidence. Although, to be honest, there was a potential I was going to get a job with them before COVID. So if it wasn't for COVID, I might be working for them now. But kind of a bummer. COVID has kind of screwed my life along with many others.
So I just looked up the entombed animals, and what I get from Wikipedia is entombed animals, also known as toad in a hole, which is interesting because isn't that a delicacy over in? I
don't know. It sounds nasty to me.
I think it is. Anyways, are animals often reportedly found alive, being encased in solid rock, coal, or wood for an indeterminate amount of time. The accounts usually involve frogs or toads. So I think we're talking about the same thing, but I didn't know.
Chikai just said it was coal mines in the UK, which is.
I'm sure there was an episode there. I'm sure this has been reported a few different places, and since Charles Fort collected thousands and thousands of cases. I'm sure he had to stumble upon this and covered that. And he probably did report the coal one. I'm not familiar with that one from him, but I am familiar with the concept.
I love the clever names that people choose. This is Jock of Ages. Jock of Ages. He says also the will in the Ukrainian mine.
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
What's that?
An out-of-place artifact. And this is, there's a few out-of-place artifacts that have been found in mines. Unexplained ancient tech, which could be modern. Could be modern tech. It looks like Michael J. Fox was, there in Back to the Future and left a piece of his car or whatever, and it ended up in a mine discovered in the 1930s and so on and so forth. But I believe that one was like a cog, rather than a wheel. It was like a cog, like a spoke. I think it was, but it was, and they can't explain it. It was inside. It was like a fossil almost inside a piece of coal or rock. I can't remember the story exactly, but that's happened a few times where they found like these bizarre things they can't explain, out of place artifacts in mines.
Wow. So Guy says that they found this. They had a piece from a local paper about it saved from the 70s when they found some more. They referenced the Fort piece.
Yes.
Also, okay. Jock of Ages is confirming toad in the hole is a UK dish, but no toads are used.
Right. It's like egg in a basket or bird in a nest or something like that. It's the toast with the little hole cut in it. And the
toast with the egg in it.
I think so. Like I think, unless I'm crazy. I mean, I've heard different versions and takes on that as well under different names too. So there's a correlation between what they're eating. It's like cheesy fries. I'm on to you folks.
So I am curious then, what do you make of some of these stories, especially with the misplaced artifacts?
Those I find fascinating. And I often think about how I just got in the mail the other day. Actually, hold on for 1 second. Let me grab it.
Okay. Rock of Ages. Da 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 dun. I'm actually, and we'll talk to Doug about this. Actually, I should tell you something embarrassing about Doug while he's gone, but I can't think of something right now.
He's back.
Oh, here.
Anyways, these are ancient coins, ancient Roman coins.
Ooh.
Now, I was thinking what I could do with them. I have 4 of them. I could drop them somewhere in Arizona and then find them. Or I could drop them somewhere in Arizona, and 100 years from now, someone could find them, and it'd be tough to explain. It probably wouldn't be tough to explain nowadays, what they know about how we live and how connected the world is. But could it be that some of these things, these are some of them, not all of them, some of them are just plain weird, but were just passed down through the ages. People travel, people move away, and brought things with them and deposit them in different places or drop them or somehow it got lost there. I mean, it's us probably moving them around. I mean, how else are they going to get certain places? Unless, again, we're just not the first person to rent the room, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I'm watching a German show right now called Dark.
Yeah. Das ist gut.
Have you seen it?
I saw the first episode.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. It's slow, but I really do like it. And it's, I guess I don't want to give away too much, except for, from the beginning, there's this cave with this weird stuff going on there. But
actually, no, I saw that. I watched that one. I watched that all the way through. Yeah. That's a slow burn, and it's very moody.
Yeah.
And dark. And very European, the stuff that's coming out of Europe right now, the type of shows anyways, at least what they're giving us on Netflix.
Beautifully filmed. I mean, the filming is gorgeous, and I love the music. And but anyway, it's got this cave with this weird stuff going on in it. But what I love about it too is I think it's very creative in the ideas that they put forth and what might be going on there.
I think it's better than Stranger Things. I've heard it compared to Stranger Things, and I think it's better than Stranger Things.
Oh, I don't know about that.
See, I liked the first season of Stranger Things, and then it got cheesy after that. Like the first one was like, you didn't know what was going on. They gave it away too soon. They could have kept that going through season after season. Then it got
No more Doug. Sorry, guys.
I'm sorry. I got to keep
from the show.
And I think they
Wow. Yeah, I
borrow a
really
lot
liked
from.
it.
Yeah. Well, you're entitled to your opinion.
Dirk is
But out of place
saying
artifacts. What do you think about out of place artifacts?
don't underestimate Soviet era industrial waste. It got dumped in weird places.
Yeah, I would say even in our own country, I think we're dumping things in weird places. However,
Took you a
dumping
minute to
ancient
digest that one.
artifacts.
I don't know. Artifacts in weird places. I guess I have not heard a lot, and I haven't studied enough of those. I know I've ran across a couple of those, and I don't know. It's always, yeah, it's hard to say. Um, I don't know. I know you're a big fan of Graham Hancock, and he focuses on some of that. I mean, I'm not as convinced with some of his cases along those lines, but I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I guess I
Trade
haven't
was
looked
going
into
on
it.
back then. Trade was going on back then.
Yeah.
More so than we give, than we'd like to believe, I think. And if you had something of value, no matter how old it was, or something you just dug out of the ground, you would trade for something else. And so these things can make their way all over the old world, so it's not that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that weird. I just think, but I would like to know the story, how these things got into these places, or I mean,
I
like
get
Greek
really
coins being
surprised.
found over here.
I really like the stories, which are really weird too. Because there were a lot of, in ancient times, people were able to get pretty deep in these cave systems.
Yes.
They do find settlements, or at least remnants from people in caves that are pretty deep, which is surprising, because it's, you wonder, how did they see down there? How did they get light down there? And often you can tell how, but sometimes you can't. So I don't know. I think some of those might be cases like that at times, but yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah. No, I agree. And yeah, it could be. That's actually a very good point. The shaman could be heading down, could have found something somewhere else, considered it an object of significance with some type of magical powers or whatnot. And where are you going to bring it? You're going to bring it to your magical lab, which is a cave within the earth where magical things happen and you perform your ceremonies and so on and so forth. So you're going to carry that down into the ground with you, and light whatever torches you need to see and forget it there.
Yeah.
That could be, that's we can only speculate with these things, but that's the part that interests me, is the unknown, is the mystery of it all. Is like, I'd love to know that story.
Yeah.
I'd like to write that story. What happened? It's fascinating stuff. You can really take that to different places, but I like that idea.
Jock of Ages is saying, like, the London Hammer. I'm not familiar with that case either. Maybe fill us in a little bit more on that, if you can, Jock.
The London Hammer.
Jacques of Ages.
That sounds like something of Viking origin, Odin's Thor's hammer. I would imagine. I mean, considering there's a lot of villages and towns and cities that are built on ancient Viking settlements.
Was found in London? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying that Thor's hammer was found in London? This sounds like
pretty much
Marvel type.
Yeah. No, I'm more of a DC type of guy, but
interesting claim. So yeah, I guess what about other, like, what are your ideas, other ideas though? Hammer is in Texas Hill Country, they say. I don't know.
MC Hammer?
Although that's a thing too, is that we really have no clue yet how far different civilizations traveled. Like the Vikings probably got to places we didn't know they got to. Ancient people could have done that. Oh, Jock says it was a hammer encased in rock that it shouldn't have been. I think it was London, Ontario.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know of that one, but that makes sense. I mean, the Vikings were all up in the northern United States, possibly Canada. I mean, Newfoundland. I mean, like or rather, what am I thinking of? But they were all up there. So there's that. The ancients did have recipes for concrete of their own design and making that were lost to time. So I mean, we can try to
Yeah, I don't know.
stuff
You never
away.
know. But I think there's two things. There's I'll share a kind of paranormal idea and a non-paranormal idea. First of all, with the non-paranormal idea, I think that what I've noticed, and case in point, Roswell Rock. The Roswell Rock was a rock with in crop circle symbol, the symbol that was a crop circle engraved on it, that was found out in the desert of Roswell. Really, when it was looked into, it's not uncommon. There wasn't artists that were using lasers to cut that kind of stuff out. So not that unusual, but it's taken on this whole legend. I think it had its own episode on Ancient Aliens. It was definitely covered there. Yeah. It's been covered on several different shows. I know about this one because I was there I wasn't there. I was there soon after my buddy was given the rock. Chuck Zukowski, who's a Roswell researcher, one of the things that he looked into. And so I got to name it the Roswell Rock Circle. But, it's not, that was an example how these legends can be created and born out of these things that kind of at first glance seem mysterious, but they're really not. So
yeah, that's when the power of belief takes over. It blinds logic at that point. Like if you want something to be something, if your belief is that strong, you can make it happen. I mean, that's like a thought form to a certain extent. But I mean, you see that all the time. But at the same time, go ahead. No.
But at the same time, now that UFOs have become more mainstream, you're hearing a lot more about the possibility. And there are military witnesses, scientists who believe that if there is something to this, if there is a technology coming here that is intelligently controlled, that it's more likely that it's us from the future. And, speaking of dark and time travel and everything. And really, I think if you lay it out with the science, it could be more plausible that, and maybe even more scientifically plausible that people are coming here from the future rather than coming from space, distances in space, other civilizations, although they're kind of, the time-space thing is kind of integrated. But that could be happening too. And if that's happening, that could lend to a lot of different types of mysteries like this.
I agree. I actually brought that up. I would think I was talking to you about that a year ago, about that whole concept. And that reason why we don't recognize it as us is because evolution has evolved us outside of recognition to modern man. And we're coming back, or we're just wearing special outfits, giving us that look, but of the grays and whatever else is reported. But yeah, because if you do look at how humans would evolve or could evolve, that is the way we're going. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting point, and probably more plausible than a lot of the other explanations I've heard for aliens and UFOs.
Yeah. So who knows? I mean, there's a lot of possibilities out there. The time travel thing is something I think of quite a bit. That and multiple dimensions, because scientists are also very friendly to this idea of multiple dimensions. A lot of people feel, including like Michio Kaku, that it's scientifically plausible, if not, proven by math. The math is there, but that lends to a lot of scientists thinking that perhaps then there are these times where the dimensions kind of interact with each other. Supposedly, some of the theories are they interact with each other constantly on a regular basis.
Yeah, but, like gravity. Gravity probably goes through all the dimensions at the same time, and that's why it's one of the weaker forces for us
here.
And that's why it's because it's being shared amongst all the dimensions. If you start going to string theory and whatnot, but so I think that's interesting. So where the veil is thin, you have different things passing in and out of at any moment in time. whatever's closest to your dimension is going to be able to interact with that dimension more. But yeah, and if you start, thinking about things multidimensionally, that explains away all the paranormal for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Most things we can't explain are easily explained when you introduce multidimensions.
So in the chat, they are talking about how that rock, that hammer, I guess, was found encased in a rock, and it was found in Texas, but the concrete was Rome, is what one of them saying.
Romans had their own version of concrete. They actually had a marine version of concrete too that they could get to set underwater, which is pretty unique in that time. Their recipe, I think, called for animal blood too, if that gives you any idea of what they were working with. But yes, the Romans were known for concrete for sure. But just because we only know of the Romans doesn't mean other people didn't have their own, recipes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just speculating when I say that.
Yeah, it's not a big technology. I mean, it's something that pretty primitive,
but it was lost.
Culture can use.
We lost concrete. We didn't have it for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We had to rediscover it in our own time.
Concrete. You lost your concrete?
I lost my concrete. It was pretty heavy, man.
Sorry, dude. So Fortean started all this stuff. Really interesting. I guess we'll wrap it up unless there are some questions here at the end or comments. Here is a goofy comment that I'm not sure what they're referring to, and maybe concrete. Off color, out of content. Oh, they're talking about making, that they use pig blood and piss to make concrete.
Yeah, I didn't know about the urine part, but and then you look at our times too. I mean, the stuff we were using in masonry only 100 years ago, we were using horsehair too as a part of the binding agent. So yeah, you use what's local to you. And in their case, there might have been a spiritual element to that.
Probably.
But we still can't recreate. I don't think we can recreate what they were doing. I think a lot of that recipe was lost. We've only, unless I'm wrong there, but I think I think that was the case. Anyways, folks, this brings us to the end of the hour.
Yeah, I could probably.
And it's been a lot of fun today. And I think Alejandro can make his own concrete. In fact, next week we're going to check in with him to see how he's doing with that. But one last time, folks. Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. I highly recommend it for your collection. It's a very entertaining read on a rainy, lightning, thunder engulfed night. And again, supplemental. I highly recommend subscribing to Fortean Times and keeping the magazine going. It needs support from readers like you, and you can get it in digital form too if that works for you. But yeah, I mean, we owe so much to Charles Fort, whether he was going for this or not. I have a deep appreciation for that, and good read.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for bringing another great book to us. Remember, everybody can go visit Doug and see his products at phoenixshaving.com. And then, of course, you can see my UFO stuff at openminds.tv. If you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, please subscribe or like. And hit whatever buttons you see down there. Just start pushing them, and because that'll help. I think
with your head.
Yeah.
Oh, and Fate Magazine. One last comment. Fate Magazine was the oldest run. It is the oldest running paranormal magazine. I think it's about 80 years old now.
When I was grabbing my books, look what I found. Oh, geez.
I subscribe to Fate as well. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, this was. I found this when I was looking for my books, which is Fate Magazine, where I have an article in here. Yeah, I got to write about Yoda in here. And you know what I wrote about, which is kind of on topic? I just wrote about how Yoda, it would be kind of in the future, they're going to think we worship this guy as probably a god or something.
Well, yeah.
In 1,000 years from now.
I think a lot of stuff is going to be misconstrued. When they start reading about Hollywood stars and how we worship them and whatnot, they're going to think we were praising stars. They might confuse that for star worship and so on and so. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we do, and archaeologists in the field do, and scientists do. We sometimes misconstrue or misunderstand what we're looking through it through our modern filter, and that I think is that you bring up a good point. Anyways, though, this is the end of the show, folks. We'll do this again next week, same bat channel, same bat time, unless he has an interview with someone famous or slightly famous before this. But thanks for joining us. And visit me at phoenixshaving.com.
Visit Doug at shaving.com. Until next time. See you guys later. Bye.
Adios.
Bye.